in-depth race recaps.
He's shown speed, he's shown dominance at other racetracks.
Pit stops and strategy.
Hell yeah, boys. Let's go. Race strategy, man.
Fantasy racing insights.
Think about being a team in the summer. We did it. Good job, boys.
Your weekly home for everything Ryan Blaney and Team 12.
Good job, Timmy. Here's to many more, fellas. Thank you.
This is the Team Blaney podcast.
Let's go race for a championship.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 196 of the Team Blaney podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This week, we are here to break down Ryan Blaney's top 10 run in the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400 at Dover Motor Speedway. Steve, welcome back to another episode of the show, and welcome back to Ohio, I guess, after your weekend trip over there to Dover Motor Speedway. How was that?
You know, except for the heat and then Amish country, it's awesome.
First time there?
Yes, first time there. We don't always travel all the way to the track when we're going to these races. We usually pick a hotel, usually a certain distance away, so you get decent pricing. And we were in the greater Harrisburg area, which is about 2.5 hours from the track. And it's really not bad to drive in. You know, I don't have any problem. We get up early anyway. A lot of the hotels we pick have like a breakfast thing anyway. Lately it's been the True by Marriott. They're really good. We start driving. We take the GPS. We do it the way we're going to, the GPS tells us. Takes us through Hershey. And then that's cool. We actually drove right by, the Hershey Park and all the roller coasters and everything else. And then next thing we know, we're in the middle of Amish country. There's a county. I can't think of the name now. It starts with an L. It's not Lawrence County, but it's a county.
Lancaster?
Lancaster. There it is. Thank you. Lancaster County. It's one of the larger populations of Amish in Pennsylvania. And fun fact, now my wife is from New Wilmington, so New Wilmington has a population itself. So she got some pretty good knowledge of of what. And she says to me, they only go to church every other Sunday. Well, we were going through town there on one of the Sundays they were going through church, and when they go to church, they don't go to one place either. That's another thing. They don't have like a church. They people host church at their places, so a bunch of them going this way, a bunch of carts going that way. And you got to be real careful. You don't want to spook the horses. You've got to pass in areas that are, not blind spots. You got to be careful. It's heck, so we really did take our time, was pretty conscious of what we were doing. And that took us an extra hour basically to get through there, to cut through there. It added to the time. We drove through got into Delaware and drove through, literally through the University of Delaware campus. I was where Jeff Gluck went to school.
Yeah, that's
so
what I was going to say.
Cool.
He had some experience over there.
Yeah, actually, I messaged him this morning. He goes, "Oh, really?" I goes, "Yeah, we went right through there. I mean, it's pretty cool." Now, I have to look for some, Blue Hens, is their nickname. And sure enough, we drive by the football stadium. It's got a huge Blue Hen logo on there. And I have to buy a shirt for Kate for Christmas. Because it's cool colors. It's a cool logo. It's a cool mascot. And, it added to the bucket list. Now we're going to have to go find one online and buy it for Christmas, I think. But, and then you get into the traffic of getting into the track. And I, people say, "Oh, quit complaining about this or that." I kind of went on a little speech about Wi-Fi at Pocono a couple weeks ago, but it's kind of hard because when they draw a map of the track and how it's laid out for you, when you're looking at it on your phone or whatever, it looks like this is over here and that's over there. But I think it was completely upside down. I think what you would think is north was south and what was south was north. So coming into it, we headed into what's mostly the main entrance going to the casino.
Okay.
Whereas if we knew the area better and knew the traffic better, we'd have drove past the track and tried to come in from the south end and there's a bunch of parking out that direction, and we probably would have gotten in a lot easier and taken a lot less time. But not knowing the area, not knowing it very well, and everybody is basically trying to pile into that one little area. And the parking ended up being good because it was outside of turn two, a couple hundred yards outside of turn two for us. So we, getting to the car was pretty quick afterward. Getting out there wasn't too bad. We're going to make it right once we get out of the parking lot anyway. But the heat was incredible yesterday, just brutal. We ran into Hannah, a friend of the show, and she said that people were passing out at the fan zone where they were doing like the interview things, right in front of the Miles the Monster there, and just everybody grouped into one area, 90 degrees, and all the humidity and everything else. So yeah, that part of it just kind of made the day really kind of sluggish because you're just kind of like, trying to get through it, trying to sit there, trying to relax, trying to feel the breeze when you could feel the breeze. Clouds would come over, and it felt like super whenever a cloud came over. But the day itself is, once again, watching the driver we watch was actually a fun day. There was a lot to watch. He was one of the few cars, like a one lap thing. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 laps to get the proper run, to get up underneath the guy. The notes will prove here. He did a lot of it Sunday.
Yeah, I mean that's one of my favorite parts of the Dover race in general. And again, we brought this up last week and stuff, like the good race poll. It was in like the 50% range and everything, but it's like you said, the way we consume the race and what we got to see and where Ryan started and what you appreciate about the track. And they actually did a good job on TNT of highlighting this. Dale Jr. mentioned it several times that a pass at Dover starts like 2 or 3 laps before they actually make the pass. So you get the opportunity to see, these guys kind of eventually work up to the high lane and get this momentum, because you can get this amazing momentum off the top and then going down the straightaways. And if you can get up under a guy fast enough, you can make the pass and get through. If you don't, there's some side-by-side racing and you have to kind of reset and go back to it again. So it was interesting to see. We'll talk about this when we get into your very short practice and qualifying recap. But because of that, the field was all messed up. There were several guys like Larson and Blaney and Chastain and some other folks that were stuck in the back that did have to make their way up through. And they did make their way up through. So you always hear that it's impossible to pass stuff. And I disagree to a point, but we did see once you started racing in the top 10, it did get really difficult. So, but I am glad there was some weather impact over the weekend. The NASCAR Xfinity Series race was rain shortened. We saw Connor Zilisch just continue to tear it up and show folks why, he's headed to the Cup Series next year so soon. And our friend Spotter Josh, once again, just can't stay out of victory lane. So congrats to him. But then the Sunday race, we knew that in the afternoon, like it is in most places this time of year, there was an opportunity for a rain shower. And we did see that, but it was quick. And we'll maybe talk about the decision later, but they made the decision to drive the track and keep things going. So normally I would ask you, all right, Steve, let's jump into our practice and qualifying recap. But that weather on Saturday didn't even cut it short and made it so it didn't even happen. And I thought it was going to be an interesting session because ahead of them knowing there was going to be a weather impact, they actually decided they were going to make it like a solo 50-minute practice session because going into this weekend, they had a new tire for the car that they never tested anywhere. So there's this huge unknown, and then the teams don't even get a chance to practice.
Yeah, I was kind of excited for that part when they said they were going to do that. It was like, oh, well, he'll practice on the same track that everybody else will practice on. We're not going to see this thing where they lay the rubber down and then it gets cleaned up and then the other session is faster because of it and all that. We weren't going to see any of that. Then it was going to be a matter of, whether he got a good lane basically in his qualifying run. But it all got rained out. They all did rain fill. We had Mamba talking to people in the midway, stuff like that going on for for Saturday. So we get to Sunday and we're starting 31st. The 9 gets the pole with the Matrix. And, the one great thing to think about this whole day and the way it finishes is next week, we're in the other end of the Matrix again. We're back at the front end somewhere, probably, starting to have a qualifying position later. So that's great. We had stages of 120, 250, 400, 9 sets of tires, a fuel run about 93 to 100 laps, and a competition caution at lap 35, which is, they have to do. They have, especially like you said, the tires was totally unknown. They hadn't tested this tire. So pit stall 37. Now, this is really huge. This is the one bad thing about qualifying not happening and not getting a little better position. 37 is on the bend and turn, basically coming out of 3 into 4. And he's got the 3 car in front of him, the 6 car behind him. And being on the bend, it makes hitting the pit stall totally difficult. And this is going to be something later on we're going to talk about at the end of the report here that people are going to blame certain things. And I saw something today by rewatching the video that I know exactly why he was saying what he said. Lap 1, we start on the inside line here, and the 9 chooses the outside, sorts back to 33rd. So loses a little bit of ground being on the inside line. The outside line takes off a little bit. And lap 3 here, we passed the 47, 35, and the 41, all about a lap or two, all the way up to 30th. And at lap 6, passing the 34 to get to 29th. At lap 7, passing the 42 to get to 28th. And at lap 10, we passed the 88 to get to 27th. I don't know. Once again, I rewatched today the in-car camera, so I didn't watch the broadcast. What happened to the 88? There was something technically something wrong with the car.
Yeah, so he immediately said, "Whoa, this is way too tight." You could see him going into the turns and going up the track. I think he thought himself that there was something wrong with the suspension or something. So they bring him down pit road. They look under the car, which takes a couple laps. Mm-hmm. They change the tire, send him back out. After he's back out running again, they took a look at the right front tire and they said there was a puncture. It was going down. Right. So unfortunately, all that time they spent, now he's going to go probably at least 2 laps down if they just came in and changed right sides.
Right.
But he ends up going down like 4 laps or so. Yeah. And with the way that people get lapped quickly at Dover, even in the next gen car, people are still getting lapped relatively quickly. The day was over before it even got started for them, which was really unfortunate. And I think I mentioned it last week. Man, I really hope he doesn't go out there and immediately, drop to the back and all this stuff. Yeah. And that happened, but it was kind of out of his control. So we got next week now at Indy at a totally different type of oval though for them to see. But I know there's probably some folks cheering the fact that
they
can't hang out on oval.
He's horrible, and he's like, you guys are just ridiculous. Yeah. And it was the thing is they fought all day and they actually got, I think, the 30th by the end. So they they may have gotten a lap back here on a wave around, did something else. They were still a couple laps down, but with some of the other issues other people had fighting through the rest of the day, they still got 7 spots out of it. So, where are we at? Lap 10, yeah, we passed him to get 27th. The 38 and the 2 are battling really hard in front of Ryan. And this is one of those things that watching in-car cameras is kind of interesting and important to know, is when they are doing that, you don't want to be the third guy in. So a lot of times you may be losing a little ground here or there and hopefully trying to hold the guy off behind you. Sooner or later it's go time and you have to push somebody, but you hope that one of the 2 sorts it out so that you can also pass that, whoever that is. The 19 took the lead off the 9 for a little bit here. Lap 20, P27 about a half a lap back of the 9 who took the lead back. And at lap 28, we passed the 38 to get to 26th. And then lap 35, we get a competition caution. We're P26 here. Ryan says we'd take it like a number tighter is what he needs. And they're going to do 4 tires fuel, of course, and it's a 9.720 out 25th. So we gain a spot on this pit stop. Now, any gains that we have in this pit stall are pretty huge, to tell you the truth, because the pit stalls, they've reconfigured pit road there. They used to be a real small pit stalls, but now they're a little bit bigger. But this is part of why they're a little bit bigger is they put them on the bend. So, it's difficult sometimes. You're going in, around, and on the bend and trying to hit the mark. And like I said, later on, it'll come into play. So Ryan and Jonathan discuss, the tire wear. and they said they looked good actually, 35 laps. So it wasn't nothing wasn't corded or anything. Restart lap 42 here. The leader is the 9, taking the top. Ryan takes the top here, and the top rolls. We get all the way to 23rd early on here at lap 45. The 10 does pass us momentarily here, and he gets, Ryan gets to 24th here. At lap 47, we pass him back. We get to 23rd. At lap 49, past the 2 car to get to 22nd. At lap 55, past the 99 to get to 21st. At lap 59, passing the 43 to get to 20th. At lap 80, past the 21 to get to 19th. At lap 93, past the 17 to get to 18th. At lap 100, passing the 6th car to get to 17th. Like I said, a lot of fun to watch this stretch here. Lap 120 here, the 9 wins the stage. Ryan's in 17th. So we worked up 14 spots since the start of the race in the first stage, and, keep doing that,
What was interesting in this first stage, the passes that happened here were a little bit different than the passes that happened the rest of the race when it gets a little bit harder. Like Ryan was getting most of these guys just on pure speed and car and driver. So he was running the bottom lane for a lot of it. Where he would make the gains is the guys couldn't wrap the turns like Ryan could. So they would come up off the bottom and Ryan would just pass them. So he didn't have to get all that big. He didn't have to work as hard, I would say, to do it like he did maybe the rest of the race. So that was entertaining to see just how he could do it. And it just reminds me, not anyway the same type of thing, but it's like Martinsville and Phoenix and some of these other places, like his ability to wrap the bottom is really amazing and a huge strength. And it worked out early in that race to be able to do that and make a lot of these passes.
Yeah, so somewhere, Ryan says the front is pretty positive. He doesn't have any rear grip. That's what he's needing. He says he needs like about 2 numbers. And then the 34 had a tire issue, I think, right at the end of the stage there. And he pitted early. So Ryan is actually 16th when they go to pit here. This is a 10.160 according to NASCAR.com. But off pit road ends up P15. So once again, pretty good pit stop, gaining another spot right on pit road. Restarting in lap 128 here. The 9 is leader, taking the outside. Ryan takes the inside here, but he does sort out to 13th right off the bat. Lap 150. It looked to me, like I said, I'm watching Ryan's in-car camera, and it looked like he just bobbled. I don't think the 71 actually got to his bumper or anything, but he just kind of bobbled it. And the 71 passes. So we're in 14th here, about lap 164. We pass the 71 back, get to 13th at lap 168, passing the 1 to get to 12. At lap 175 or so, the green flag pit stops are starting here. And Ryan is behind Joey at this point. He says, quote, "What are we doing here, dude?" There are points and times where, Ryan, don't get me wrong, is very confident in himself, right? But he also knows he has better equipment than 95% of the guys out there. And he will get behind somebody sometimes and just be like, and I know that I'm better than you. Get the heck out of the way, There's once or twice you've heard him go tell Tim, and Tim will tell a spotter, but that's usually like a lapper or something like that. This is a situation where, no offense to Joey Logano, but he's faster than Joey, So he does end up at lap 178 passing him. Joey gives it up in 3 and 4. He finally understands, and we're P11. At lap 185, we're at P6 here as the green flag pitting is happening. They go ahead and pit. It's a 9.50. By lap 190, we're P19, and the cycle is continuing here. At lap 198, past the 22 again to get to 13. The 99 is the leader here. He hadn't pitted yet, and he hangs on for a while. At lap 209, we passed the 1 to get to 12. At lap 214, passing the 99 now, who's falling backwards, to get to 11th here. At lap 216, passing the 8 car to get to 10th. At lap 247, past the 23 car to get to 9th. At lap 250 here, the 20 wins the stage, Ryan, P9. So into stage 2, we went, another 8 spots up. We're working our way perfectly to, the longest stage is still to come, so a lot of time to make up some more spots.
Yeah. And I thought it was going to be really difficult to get to the top 10 by the first stage. So he made up a ton of ground there. And I thought by stage 2, hopefully he can kind of crack the top 10, and then it's kind of a whole new race for them. So it's nice to get a couple of points here. The unfortunate thing that happens throughout the day is that everybody ahead of him in points is pretty much running ahead of him for a good chunk of the day. So they do pick up a nice chunk, or at least what could have been worse at the end by some incidents that happened. But it was still good to get at least a couple of points.
So Ryan tells them we're pretty solid here. We don't really need any real adjustments here. The top stop for 4 tires is 9.580. Tim and Ryan discuss taking the bottom on a restart here. And for the choose, the 20 is leading out, takes the top. Ryan takes the bottom here. And we restart at lap 259. The 20 spins himself out. I don't know what day. And he comes on, well, after the race, because he does this twice. After the race, he comes on and says it was all him. So Ryan
this is like a habit he has, and Larson will do this from time to time, but this year specifically, I mean, even at Sonoma, he did it at the perfect time during a pit sequence and didn't end up really losing much ground. But the 20 does like to take it to the edge a lot, and sometimes pays the consequences, but sometimes has some great luck too along the way.
Yeah, so he doesn't hit anything, but Ryan is 9th at this point still. Johnson's staying out here. The 9 is now the leader, taking the top. Ryan takes the top here, restarting at lap 265. The 45 passes. The 23 here. We're sorting to P9 basically. Is what happens? We pass one guy in the 45, but passes us, and then we pass the 23. So kind of a net gain of nothing. Lose a spot, gain a spot. Lap 315 here. We're battling with the 45 here, but really can't complete this pass here. Lap 320. Tim warns of like raindrops. There's just, a little bit of like drizzle, kind of a drop here or there. Lap 322, we passed the 45 to get to 8th. At lap 323, we start some green flag pit stops. And this is just one of those things I wish like the rain could hold off a couple extra laps. But lap 326, we're pitting. It's a 9.800. At lap 330 here, we're P20, a lap down. At lap 333, P16, a lap down. The 4, the 20, the 3, the 7, and 38 still haven't pitted yet. At lap 335 here, P13 lap down. The 20, the 3, and the 7 haven't pitted yet at this point still. And then at lap 337, P11 a lap down, and then we get the caution for that slight rain. And the 20 and the 3 haven't pitted. So, it just kind of like, he third car lap down, they tell him, and he says, lucky, and he says, tell you what. So, because it's just kind of one of those things where they, now there's only a couple cars on the lead lap, and they can pit, not lose much ground if they do pit. Everybody else has to wave around.
The 20, that's the lucky one. The 20 goes from spinning out to suddenly having control of the race, and it was just crazy how that works.
Yeah, so the 20, the 3, and the 9 of those guys still in the lead lap pit, and Ryan does the wave around. The 11 actually resumes the lead here. I think there's, from what I have here, so the way the wave around is supposed to work, you're still supposed to get behind lap cars or something like that. They're allowed to fall back if they want to. 1 or 2 of the lap cars do restart in front of Ryan here. The 7 car being one of them, and I think the 34 is in there too. So restarting on the outside. The 11 takes the outside. Restarting at lap 343. Stuck behind the 7. Goes outside of the 7 and the 34 in 1 and 2 on the first 2 laps. So one of them on the one lap, one of them on the next lap. P10 at lap 364 passes the 19 to get to 9th. At lap 370 passes the 45 to get to 8th. Tim is talking about real rain approaching now. And then at lap 384, we get the caution for the 1 car. Actually, is what what the caution was. He was off the fence in 2, and then it's something about him blocking pit lane or something at one point.
Yeah, he tried to drive it back and then was down on the apron and just spun like into the grass that was down there. So it actually took longer. It didn't end up mattering really, but it ended up taking longer on the sequence.
Well, what ends up happening is that causes the rain gives them a chance for the rain to come in. Jonathan discusses either an 8 or a 7, which is just now what is 8, what is 7? Can't wait to find out. But then Jonathan asks, how much tighter do you need it to be with the track's going to be maybe cleaned up a little bit here. Tim says the light rain here. Jonathan says 20, and he says that in reference to how many cars on the lead lap, because that'll have a lot to do with what you do with your strategy. But at lap 386, we get the red flag and a 56-minute rain delay here for the flag. And it's kind of cool because it cools things off a little bit, although it just gets steamy when the sun comes back out, really. But a lot of good places to hide underneath the stands there. A lot of room underneath the stands, so you don't have to stand next to somebody crowded underneath there. So
yeah, we were making jokes in our Discord whether you guys had bailed in time to get a good spot for the rain or not.
Well, it's the one thing that's good about listening to Tim is but we also have the gear too. We bring the ponchos. We both have one in our bag. Usually, if you put it in your bag, you usually don't need it. So
yep.
That's the rule of thumb. So we always got it in the bag just in case. But so we had them on just because of electronics and stuff, so we can kind of take our time and not. And you don't want to run down those steps if they're wet, because those grandstands are all metal grandstands. So one lucky thing about the whole situation is no lightning in the area, so there was no lightning delay based on that. So when it resumes here, they said they're going to open pit road and let them come right around to pit right away. But something happens there where the lights aren't working on pit road. Jonathan sends Tim a text on their strategy because Jonathan doesn't come all the way down, in between. And from what I can tell, I think the strategy a lot has to do with who pits in front of Ryan and whether they're going to, and Ryan has the choice to make by what it sounds like what he says here. Says, ends up taking, extra lap because the pit lights don't work here. And then Jonathan says, your call, will be ready. So they're going to count the cars that stay out, and it's up to Ryan's discretion, and then I think they're planning, what they end up doing is a two tire stop here. So we get the 11, the 20, the 9, the 5, the 48, 24, and the 3 all stay out in front of Ryan. 2 tire stop here, 7.52. Now, after this, I don't know if it's after this or I might have it in my notes exactly when he says it, but he apologizes. Okay.
Twice.
So
after this and later.
Yeah. And later on. Okay. And what I want to tell people that are paying attention, that listen to us, if he apologizes, there's a reason he apologizes. I watched it today. If you guys got Max and you want to go back and watch this pit stop, go watch it, because even though you're only watching through the front windshield, you can tell what went wrong. And it was the driver. He did not hit the pit sign correctly. In other words, he stopped short. And the reason I can tell you that is because the front tire changer had to chase the car. He literally usually runs right across the front of the car and just turns and changes the tire. He had to run up the track, towards turn 4, towards turn 3, however you want to put it, to get to the tire. So Ryan stopped a little bit short, and that was a second or two. And that second or two, 2 seconds really roughly, because the 2 guys who passed him did about a 5 second long 2 tire stop. And that was the 19 and the 45.
Yep.
So once again, do not, without, be blaming, things that you don't know and don't see. And I know you all just look at numbers and, it was 7 seconds. But there was a reason it was 7 seconds. And it really had nothing to do with the actual tire changing. It had to do with where the car was positioned in the box. And those guys are, when they put the sign down, they want it to hit the sign. So when they hit the sign, those guys are running to certain spots. And if you watch that pit stop, and I could go back and record it, maybe I should, you can see how he has to keep coming, and that might have been an extra second right there. So the 4 also stays out here. So, Ryan ends up being about P11 for the choose. The 11 takes the top, Ryan takes the bottom. The 45 is in front of Ryan, and the 54 is to his outside. And he's reminded here that those guys are racing for something too, to make the next round of the challenge. So restart lap 392 here, and the 20 wrecks on the coming around the first lap on the front stretch there. When once again, he just like a one-man wrecking crew there. Luckily, he didn't hit nothing. Nobody hit him.
Yeah, and I think he overreacted. And they mentioned, or Denny mentioned in his post race, that before they got back in their cars after the rain delay, all he said to the 20 was, "Hey, just don't, you race me hard or whatever. Just don't take me out."
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that almost even got into the 20's head because he gets loose a little bit and then probably just tries to keep it off the 11 and spins himself out again. But this is, I would say for people to go and watch, if you're going to watch someone's in car, go and watch the 23 car's in car camera from this incident, because he almost gets taken out. And I tell you what, I don't know how this wasn't another incident where Ryan gets clipped at the end or something, because I purely was waiting for it, because it took a little while to develop this crash, because the 20 spun and it looked like maybe he was going to be clear again, but then some other folks get involved along the way of the 4 and such. So, and the 24. So when I mentioned earlier about points, the 20 and the 24 losing all those positions right at the end of the race helps. At least control it a little bit, because Ryan does lose a tiny bit of ground in this race, but it could be worse having to start all the way in the back. So, but he made it. There's a little bit of luck out of the day. Didn't get it when he needed it with the caution or anything like that, but he does make it through this crash. And I will say, Steve, if he starts 2 positions higher on this restart, if he doesn't lose those on the pit stop, who knows what happens there?
Yeah, he may have been part of it. Yeah, at that point. So Ryan comes on the radio while they're doing, running caution laps here, so I completely screwed up the lane choice and the pit stop. So this is the first time he apologizes for that. And the lane choice thing, I didn't catch quite like, on this one. Now later, the next one, I kind of do catch what he did wrong here. P10 here. The 19 is P5. So the 19 is moved up on his, with his 2-tire stop here. 45 is P9. And like I said, those are the 2 guys that ended up, coming off pit road in front of him here. For the choose, the 11 takes the top. Ryan takes the top. The 54 is now in front of Ryan. The 3 is on the inside here. And then we get this caution for the 38 and on this restart. And we get P8 to P8 with that happening. So we moved up a little bit. And we're going to get this green-white checker here. Now, for the green-white checker, the 11 takes the top. Ryan takes the top. But it was 3 or less bottom, Tim said. Now, when you hear that, 3 or less. So if he counts 3, you need to be number 4. And he's counting 1, 2, 3. Now, the third guy was the 9 car, and that was the car right in front of Ryan. For some reason, I don't know if it's just a reaction thing, that Ryan sees him go left and I go right. But what he should have done is followed the 9. And he didn't. And he'll apologize for this post race too. So he loses a row, ends up in the 5th row from P8. And that's not good. That's like being P10 all of a sudden, right? On that outside, we passed the 6 and the 17 in the 2 laps here to get to P8. The 11 wins. So like I said, what could have been starting on the inside behind Chase Elliott, maybe got past him. Who knows? Chase was on older tires. Ryan had at least 2 newer ones, but he apologizes for screwing up the last choose cone. So just a little bit of, I don't know if it's not miscommunication, because Tim says 3 or less. So 1, 2, 3, then you should be number 4. And I think that's where he, got himself a little bit mixed up. That because he's watching the guy right in front of him, which is the 9 car, and the 9 car goes left. So you go, oh, okay, I'll go right. And ends up losing a whole row over there. I don't know why so many guys in front of them took the high lane, but I know why. I mean, the high lane moves a little better because the leader's in it. But Ryan was doing such a good job passing from the low lane that I think that's why they talked about that earlier in the race about doing it. But overall, from starting from 31st to finish 8th and to get some a stage point or 2 in the second stage, a pretty good day, pretty solid day. Considering that they didn't have to do any kind of weird strategy flip to do it. That's the part that's most impressive of the whole day, is they didn't have any kind of like situation where there were split strategies and this one, that when they went this way and that way and something happened and it fell in their lap or anything like that. They just passed cars and then kept passing cars and then kept passing cars. So although a lot of people post race will be critical of the Fords or the Penske cars. Truthfully, if the guy starts in the top 10, we're probably talking about him being top 5 at the end of the day, or maybe not having a chance to win. So overall, they have speed, and overall, we know how good a race car driver we're watching. So pretty good day, really, for everybody involved, I think.
Yeah, from like what you said, starting at the rear, getting trapped a lap down at one point, having a little bit of an issue on that pit stop and losing a couple spots late, surviving the crash and not getting into that. I mean, I'll take P8 all day long. It would have been nice to see if they did get, practice and qualifying in, and maybe he only starts 20 something instead of 30, and he gets up into that top 10 and top 5 a lot earlier. There were points in this race. There was one point in this race where it was scary how loose he got. But they did adjust on the car after that. But actually, when you brought up him getting loose in front of the 71, it was the in-car camera was kind of on the edge of your seat, because he was getting in. No matter, he would run the bottom, and that would happen. He'd run the top, and that would happen. There was at least 2 times during the race where he was trying to pass somebody and got underneath them, and kind of like what the 20 did on that restart, almost lost it as well. They did tune on the car eventually and got him tightened up to where he needed to be. And there would be a few times where you could see, and Tim would call it out, fastest car on the track. He just didn't have the track position to take advantage of that. So I think this is 3 straight races at Dover where they've run really well. I think it's another track where they go back next year. You might have the opportunity to get a victory if circumstances play out in a different way. But if you told me he was going to, everything was canceled and he starts 31st and he's going to get stage points in a P8, I'd say sign me up. I'm good with that. I talked a little bit of, go ahead.
I was saying, and more importantly, than is now this next week coming up, be at the front end of the matrix for practice, the front end, the matrix for qualifying at Indy. So hopefully be able to put that car up in the top 10 to start the race this weekend coming up.
So I mentioned the point standing situation, and it's another one of those where I'll say it could have been a lot worse just based on how everybody else around him ran. But with the 24 and 20 having their issues, this does help along the way, and the 5 starting deep in the field and a few things. So Ryan is still 7th in the standings, which to me, again, with 7 DNFs is still really impressive. 126 points back of the leader. Going into the weekend, he was 123 points back of the leader. So he does lose 3 points on the weekend. But again, all things considered, not too bad. Unfortunately, he's still at a pretty big gap to 6th, who is Christopher Bell, 67 points. He did actually gain 4 points to that position, but he's still a ways away from being able to move up another spot in the regular season standings. Chase Elliott, who led hits his most laps like ever at like a non-Martinsville track, dominated much of the day. A lot of people are being real critical of their decision on their pit stop to pit when the 11 stayed out at one point during the race and lost control of the lead. But he does take control of the Cup Series point standing. So the 9 of Chase Elliott is now your leader by 16 points over William Byron. And with Byron's issues, the 9 actually had like a 30-point swing or so in this race to take the lead. I think he was like 14 or 15 back of the lead going in, and now he's 16 ahead. So Byron's in 2nd, Larson is 3rd, Hamlin is 4th, 39 points back of the lead. And I know and again, I don't question his decision. He had to be there with his family when they had the child and everything. But Denny's like thinking like, man, if I would have just raced at Mexico, if I would have just shown up, parachuted in, parachuted out, you know what I mean? Like, and flew out, like he would have a really good shot of winning the regular season championship. And honestly, with the amount of races left, he still could. But Denny Hamlin moves up a spot to 4, 39 points out of the lead. Tyler Reddick falls a spot to 5th, 62 points out. Again, Bell is in 6th, 67 points out. Blaney's in 7th, 126 back. Chase Briscoe is in a solid spot in 8th there, 132 back. Bowman is in 9th, up 3 spots. So he's back into the top 10 again, 155 points back. Chris Buescher, who we raced around a lot yesterday in the 17, he is in the 10th position now, 174 points back. And teammate Joey Logano, just to mention, is in 11th. I don't know if you were watching much or could see much of this throughout the race, since I know you're kind of focusing on Ryan, but the 22 and the 1, were playing bumper cars like all race long,
There
which was
were,
kind of crazy all the way
yeah,
up until, the one like kind of crashes and everything. Like they could not get away from each other and they raced the heck out of each other. At one point they were racing each other in front of Ryan, which was a little bit crazy. So I'm glad he didn't
that's
get caught up in any of that.
that's what, that's what I was going to say. There was points and times that today watching the in-car camera that they were behind. He was behind, and they really were like rubbing on each other a couple different times. And I kept thinking, wow, this is maybe something you don't see because of the way TV covers things, and they're not necessarily near the front. But I wonder how much that's going to continue between the two of them in the weeks to come. There obviously some bad blood there to be racing each other like that.
So you were there in person. You were there as a fan in the stands. So you did benefit from this decision, depending on which way you want to think about it. I want to get your opinion on this. So they only had 14 or 15 laps to go when that red flag comes out at the end for the rain. Denny Hamlin's leading. There's an opportunity still. I mean, it's a decent amount of laps to go if they can get things restarted. What are your thoughts on them taking the hour or so, drying the track, and bringing them back racing again to finish just the race with, like I said, by the time they got back green again, it wasn't a ton of laps to go, but not a bad amount.
I pulled up the radio, was it PRN, I think, for them, and listened to them for, before they sent it. They sent it away after a certain point because they knew they were going to be off, waiting for a little bit. But when they first talked about it, they talked about how long it takes to dry. And then, basically that it was one cell that moved through quickly. Sure, it washed the track away, but the sun came out behind it. And they said drying time would be an hour if it was just drying the track with the dryers. But that sun coming out behind it really did a great thing to help dry. And for me, I was glad to see it. We came, so far and drove so far, and we took 2 days off. So we were expecting that if it got rained out on Sunday, we would have been there Monday. So we kind of start doing that a lot more often now with planning these trips, that are like that. So I was glad they went ahead and finished it. It was kind of cool to get the integrity of a full race in, and because you don't want to hear anybody saying about, oh well, he wouldn't, or this wouldn't, or now of course the guy that was leading when it happened did end up winning, so that's even better. But didn't end up being some sort of strategy thing that somebody ran longer and got away with it or something. So I was pretty glad they did it. I was pretty glad they knew they had a curfew time, like if it gets to 8-something o'clock, 8:10 or something like that, I think it was, they would throw the white flag, kind of thing. But that never got anywhere near that close. So super way to finish it up.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the race winner goes, it pretty much stayed the same. The 19 didn't make a valiant effort. He was quoted after the race saying kind of what a lot of teammates say: if that wasn't my teammate, I probably would have gotten a lot more dirty there and won the race, which they did get side by side. They did, I think, make a little bit of contact, but he didn't want to crash his teammate. And what he said was, I don't want to crash my teammate and myself and then a Hendrick car win. So you can tell how much, Toyota probably talks to those guys in those situations about not letting that happen. Ryan, was P8 when it rained, finishes P8, did have to dodge the crash in some of those other situations there. So
was pointed out that it did flip the bracket challenge
it
around.
did. Both positions. It was great because after that one cautions, because the 10 and the 42 are both a lap down, but the 10 makes a pass before the caution comes out and ends up getting the free pass. So he had it all to himself, and the last position in the bracket, the Cinderella story, makes it all the way to the final round next week in Indianapolis. And then I don't know what the deal with the 54 and 45, like the 45 ends up choosing behind or something. Like he could have chosen side by side and he did it. And the 54 just kind of makes up the spots. And I think Ryan even got past the 45. So he kind of gave that away. And I mentioned, I think last week, the 45 is the one that won the Dirty Mo Denny Hamlin version of the bracket last year. So kind of cool that he made a run all the way again here. So, but we have it's set up a battle of the ties now. So
no offense to Dylan, but I don't think that they're going to have enough speed to, just pure speed at Indianapolis, basically.
No. He won't beat him heads up, but he can beat him the way he's beat a lot of these other guys by attrition. So if you have to think about it, if the 10's goal is just to stay clean, try to stay on the lead lap, do what he can, then you have a guy in the 54 that's super aggressive. But maybe they're telling him going into the weekend. Now, again, see, it's tough because the 54 legitimately needs to win a race to make it to the playoffs. So it's like, how do you tell a guy that's in that position to back off just to win the $1 million? And if you have to remember, as far as I know, this $1 million isn't a team. Now the driver could choose to give it to his some money to his pit crew and others, but it is a driver only win. Like they're the ones that are getting the money for this. So how do you tell a guy that's still fighting for his life to get into the playoffs to back it off just so you can win this $1 million? So I think there's still a pathway for the 10 car to win it, because the 54 is an aggressive driver and could get taken out in some other way. So it'll be interesting to see. And I'm sure that, this is a colleague car that the 10 that Dylan is in. I would not be surprised if, Grandpa Richard is throwing some extra money their way this weekend to tie the best of whatever they can get. Though there was some comments made over the 8-3 radios after the race where Richard wasn't too excited about the cars they're bringing to the track. So
I got, what? I heard that and I have a comment. That's on you, buddy.
Yeah, that's what everyone's comment was. You're the owner, man.
You're the owner. Either pony up or do whatever it is. Like the one guy who replied, I think, was one of the crew chiefs, and he was kind of like, "We'll keep working on it." Somewhere you're missing something, and I think it's in their department of how they their technical department. I think they're missing engineering. I think something that they don't have is good enough engineering, and it may be a financial thing. They may not be paying to have good engineering. If you look at the big three, the big team for Penske, being the big Ford team, the big Hendrick team, and Gibbs, they all have guys in engineering who know how to engineer these cars to get more out of them. And I think they're missing some engineering. I think that's what it really comes down to. They may need a guy or two, need to pay a guy or two a good amount of money to be there to help them sort this out.
Yeah, and this was talked about on the teardown as well. Not specifically, I think. Maybe I think it actually wasn't a discussion about Ty Dillon's chances to maybe beat, a Gibbs car or something. Is that, parts for the next gen car are no longer in short supply. Mm-hmm. So the big teams have put a lot of money behind their quality control programs now, to where guys are, they're buying up multiples of these parts and then scanning them, because not every part can be perfectly made the same, and figuring out which are the best ones to put on the car. And then basically, I don't know if they can resell the others or if it's just a loss. Like they put the rest on the shelf and that's it. So that's where the big teams can still outspend some of these other folks. And, Richard is a big team, but I think he also is a little bit more frugal than others. So anyway, that was just funny. That those comments that he made it over the 8 radio, and actually went and doubled down and made it over the 3 radio as well. So we'll see how that plays out for those folks. So again, Ryan Blaney 7th in the overall standings in the NASCAR Cup Series, 126 points back of the new leader, who is Chase Elliott in the 9, who has a 16-point lead over William Byron in second. That mostly wraps up our talk from the weekend at Dover Motor Speedway, but we should give our recap of the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Let's take a look at our starting lineups, our points totals, and we'll give a update on the standings overall. So my starting lineup for the weekend: Chase Elliott got me 48 points. Chase Briscoe got me 44 points. Kyle Busch got me 29, not too bad. Ryan Preece, though, who I going into the weekend, I had a lot more confidence in. He did get caught up in one of those accidents late in the going. 18 points for Ryan Preece. Denny Hamlin got me 57. So and I made this joke in the Discord. I said, this is why I lose fantasy every week, is because I go, hey, I should check out my lineup before it's too late. Oh, wait, stage 3 has already started. Well, I had Alex Bowman in the garage. So I left 49 points in the garage. So that would have been good enough if I got it to at least crack me into the top 10 if I had made that swap. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. I had John Hunter Nemechek over Ty Dillon. That was wrong. I had Chase Elliott over Hamlin. That was wrong. I had Kyle Busch over Chastain. That was right. And I had Reddick over Gibbs, and that was wrong. So I only got one of the featured matchups. 48th overall on the weekend, 206 points earned.
I had a decent lineup. I had Hamlin. Bell ended up being the one that messed me up because I had Bell, and he did what he did at the end of the race to ruin himself. Chase Elliott, 48 points total. Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe. I had Buescher in the garage, and I really didn't mess with any of that as long as nobody wrecked and so forth. And then the matchups, same problem for me. I did have Dillon over Nemechek, so I got that one, but I had Chase, and he lost to Denny there. I had Chastain, who wrecked himself out, lost to Cal. And then I had Reddick, who ended up losing to Gibbs. So I lost another 30 points in those matchups. Give me 10 more, I end up popping up in there somewhere.
So let's take a look at the top 10 in the overall standings for the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Not overall, actually top 10 in points earned on the weekend at Dover. And it starts with a tie for 9th with JD Racing and Montana 12 fan with 235 points on the weekend. 8th was the Daisy Dukes, just one more point ahead, 236. 7th was my wife, Rogers T, 237. Wow. 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, all separated by just 1 point each. 6th, Cool Guy 2K, 238 points. 4th, we had a tie, Shar 12 fan, and who I think is in the Discord, and Al 12 fan, 243 points earned. 3rd is Alyssa C, 248 points. 2nd is Frank fan 12, 252 points on the weekend. And Blaney Best, who I think follows us on social media and has her own Blaney social media as well, wins the weekend, 257 points overall. So congrats to them. Now we're going to take a look at the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. I've moved up just slightly. Not great. 71st overall. Man, I'm terrible. 3,000. Well, I can't even talk trash this year because this is like historically bad for me. 3,474 points overall.
Notice I have not said much to you about it.
Yeah. It's just so bad. Top 10 in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Dr. Race Chaser, 10th overall, 3,941 points. Fike 21 is in 9th, 3,943. Moose Hunter 1960 is in the 8th position, 3,950. And 7th is the Daisy Dukes, 3,961. Your team, Mez 12, is in 6th, 3,993 points. Former champ Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing is in 5th, 4,030 points. Pit Stop Pro, 4th, 4,034. 3rd is Alyssa C, 4,075 points. Vance 12 has slipped out of the lead here to 2nd, 4,085 points. And Jordan Daniels has retaken the league in the overall standings for the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League with 4,092 points on the weekend. So that brings us. Go ahead.
I want to, not that I'm predicting nothing. I'm just I'm now within 100 points of the lead. And these next couple weeks from here till the playoffs are dangerous. If you guys play fantasy, these next couple weeks are crazy because what will happen is you'll run out of usage on guys. So now I'm at a point where I've used this guy 10 times. I've used that guy 10 times. Who else do I have that I can put in the lineup, still maximize some points, still keep moving up and in there? But it's really kind of cool that because I really wasn't. I was probably right outside the top 20 the first couple of weeks of the year. So I've kind of clawed my way. I'd like to just maintain basically where I'm at, but it'd be great to move up a spot or two as the year goes on. So, keeping an eye on that. But it is interesting. This next bunch of weeks before the playoffs, you start losing the usage of guys, and then the playoffs resets it, and you get to use them 5 more times. So these next couple of weeks are crazy because you got to find guys that you haven't used yet, and hopefully they have a good week.
So that brings us now to this weekend's race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. For the second year in a row, we are back on the oval there for the Brickyard 400. Practice actually kicks off on Friday. There is a separate practice session at 1:05 p.m. Eastern time from Indianapolis. That's on True TV. I believe it's going to be a 50-minute session. I believe it's going to be a combined session situation. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race is at 8 p.m. Eastern time across town at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park for the T-Sport 200. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time on FS1 if you want to check that out. Saturday, 2:35 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the qualifying session for the NASCAR Cup Series at Indianapolis. You can watch that on True TV, on the Indianapolis Radio Network, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio for the radio. The Pennzoil 250 for the NASCAR Xfinity Series is at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the CW, again on the Indianapolis Raceway Radio Network and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio to listen to that CW on the television. Sunday, we have the big race, the Brickyard 400, one of the crown jewel events that has returned to the schedule. The Brickyard 400 presented by PPG from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch that on TNT Sports, streaming on HBO Max along with the in-car cameras, the Indianapolis Raceway Raceway Radio Network, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on the radio. And this will be the final race for TNT before everything heads over to NBC and USA for the rest of the season, and the final race of the bracket challenge that we talked about earlier. That is a battle of ties between Ty Dillon and Ty Gibbs. Taking a look at Ryan Blaney's stats at on the oval at Indianapolis, just 7 career starts on the oval, 26 laps led, an average start of 13.4, average finish of 17.7. Does have 2 top 10s, including a top 5, 3 DNFs though, 2 for crashes. And a third one in 2020 was also a crash where they got hit on the DVP and didn't have a chance to finish that out. So last finishes there, or the only finish really in the next gen car, was last year. Started 7th, finished 3rd. This was one of those heartbreaking races where I still am a little bit bitter. You know, we talk about Brad and being instrumental, Brad Keselowski being instrumental in Ryan's career and all this stuff and all this great stuff. And, you know, they're still pretty good friends and everything. But man, late stages of the race, Ryan had been running, you know, up front, hadn't led any laps yet, but was in position to take control of the race. You know, he's racing the 5 car. The 6 is on a crazy fuel strategy that I don't think even Joey Logano could pull off.
No, he
And
won't
stays out through a caution flag all the way up until they hit pit road entrance. And as they are coming to green, where the 6 has control of the restart, he peels off to pit road. There's some confusion. They make the restart. Ryan's behind. The 5, I believe, takes the lead and goes on and wins the race. Ryan finishes 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like he had a really great car. Again, he hadn't led any laps yet, but was in really great position to take control of the race there. I think he had a better car than the 5 as well. It's just that restart just messed pretty much everything up, and just saw the kind of a crown jewel race slip through their fingers.
Yeah, I just wanted to see the 6 get to the restart zone, get down the backstretch, then run out of gas where everybody can go around him, and it would have been ball game. The last whatever couple laps would have been over. So, yeah, that was very disappointing. It was great that you pointed out too about the statistics for this race. The fact that this will only be the 2nd race on the oval with the next gen car. So, really, we have almost no sample size to go off of. It's kind of interesting. Like, people do these, things where they'll take all the statistics and they'll put them together. But the reality is once you've changed cars, some of those statistics really don't matter, because the car, the next gen car is a whole different animal. So it was very promising to me, like the type of speed they had last year. Hopefully we'll have it again this year.
Let's take a look at the top 10 finishers in that race of the Brickyard 400 last year. Again, Kyle Larson went to victory lane. Tyler Reddick did get past Ryan at the end of there for 2nd. Ryan was 3rd. Christopher Bell 4th. Bubba Wallace was 5th. Todd Gilliland, Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, Noah Gragson, and Chase Elliott rounded out the top 10. You mentioned the speed thing, and I've been saying it every week, and I said it again last week, that he no longer has any bad tracks. They have been fast everywhere they've unloaded this year. If you listen to the teardown, it was really weird. And I know Jeff and Jordan sometimes are talking from like they're trying to understand what's happening with everybody, and it's hard to know all the time. But for weeks, they've been talking about how the 12 is the fastest car on the circuit every week, and they've just had some bad luck and things not go their way. And oddly enough, this week on their show, they are like that. Feel like the 12's taken a step back recently. We're like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, he's had some crashes and some other unfortunate incidents here. They didn't have an opportunity to, he gets crashed out at Sonoma while he's running up, in the top 10, like whatever. I mean, they can't keep up with literally everything at all times, but I thought that was weird. They're fast everywhere they go. They have an opportunity to win, I think, or at least an opportunity at a top 5, top 10 everywhere they go. I have high hopes. I don't want to have super high hopes, but I have high hopes for this weekend. I think this is Roger Penske's, new backyard. He owns the place. They want to run well here. They want to win here again for him. Man, it still hurts from last year. I'm really hoping that there's a little bit of a redemption story this weekend.
I'm hoping that they're all eating cookies on the front stretch at the end of this. Cookie Monster has been announced as the Grand Marshal. I don't know if you knew that or not. So just
it'll go great with the celebration.
That's right. Cookies on the bricks.
Anyone from that top 10 that you think fantasy wise? And you mentioned that unless people have been really well about keeping up with load management, are there, or maybe we should talk about some maybe surprise guys that you might still have available that you should look at this weekend. And one right off the top of my head, as a guy that had a great race this past weekend that was thrown off by a tire issue, and that was AJ Allmendinger. If you still have starts for AJ, I think that this might be an opportunity for them to get a decent finish. I'm not saying he's going to go out and win, but they're a threat for a top 10, top 15, and some of the guys you have left, that's kind of what you need out of them.
Well, I mean, if they have anything over there in their camp, they're going to throw it at the 10 car, though, right?
True.
Bowman is the one. Bowman is just like he's putting points together, getting decent finishes. He's making sure that the cut line isn't really a danger zone for him at this point. He's far enough away from it now where it would take 2-3 guys winning outside the top 16 to knock him out. So he's one that I would definitely want to be looking at. Once again, like all the Hendrick are like that. But like for a sleeper, I always think of him as a sleeper because people forget about him, even though he's in the best equipment, or what should be the best equipment. Something I found interesting, like Busher, Priest, and Brad running there at one point on this past Sunday, we're running like right 1, 2, 3 almost with each other. And so that tells me that they've got it together as far as like their speed. It's a question of how much speed do they actually have, and Busher seems to be the guy that usually excels of the group of 3. That'll be kind of interesting to see how their practice and qualifying goes, because this track here is way different than anything else they go to. And I think they're underneath a different package here this weekend too, from what I understand. So it could be real interesting to see how they qualify underneath that package.
So again, if you want to tune in this weekend, 1:05 p.m. Eastern time on Friday is practice for the NASCAR Cup Series. That's going to be on True TV, most likely streaming on HBO Max as well. Saturday, 2:35 p.m. Eastern time, you have qualifying from Indianapolis for the Cup Series, again on True TV. And then Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, the Brickyard 400 presented by PPG from Indianapolis Motor Speedway on TNT, streaming on HBO Max with the in-car cameras, SiriusXM NASCAR radio, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network if you want to listen to it on the radio. Well, Steve, I think that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of the Team Blaney podcast. Thank you, everyone, once again for tuning in, whether it's on the audio version, whether it's live on Facebook and YouTube, or tape delay on Facebook or YouTube as well. We thank you for joining us this week. During the week and on race day, you can find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search for Team Blaney. We'd also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit ryanblaneyfamilyfoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So for my co-host, Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Lancaster County. Check out the